There sat our hero on the edge of his bed, in his little room, in his little shed. A unique little robot, not a thought in his head, not one for those living, not one for those dead. He didn't see joy in owning a toy, or the dances and songs by the girls or the boys. He did not understand the greatness of living, the grace of caring, or the warmth of giving. The chaotic winds of romance passed by. His life held no warmth, but he could not die, and with no friendships to grow to brighten his day, he just sat and he stared, and he waited and stayed. His creator looked down, looked at him and frowned. The robot's life held no joy, never got off the ground. He was to be the first of his kind, the first to feel warmth in his robot mind. But when he said nothing with no glint in his eyes, his pet build was scrapped and his father's pride died. But never a thought of destruction, never a notion to scrap this odd little robot that turned out so crap. Other robots were built with purpose and codes, truly having no guilt or empathy, just codes. And no plans were made to build another like him, because such a failure did not need a twin. And so he still waited alone in his room, on the edge of the bed, never once to move, not breathing, not dead, eyes fixed to the door, not a smirk, nor a snark, nor a sneer, nor a snore, of fear, not a twitch, of grief, not a quiver, not a nod of understanding of cold's icy shiver. He simply sat and sat, his eyes on the door. He sat, and then sat, and then sat some more. The years passed, alone, in silence and peace, when all at once the tableau ceased. His father stood in the doorway once more, but he dared not enter, dared not leave the door. "Why don't you go out? Why don't you speak?" Yet the little robot sat there, not bold, but not meek. And again there was silence, no answer or reply. And after the tears, the seasons flew by. And the shed was sealed off with the robot inside. The door was nailed shut where his creator had cried. And soon after, the old man passed away. Not a one of his robots had a word to say. And what he'd created was eventually sold. The robot scrapped and destroyed or abandoned to mold. And the seasons took care of the walls and the bed. And the robot sat free from his rotten old shed. And the people, they looked, and the people, they saw. This timeless little robot, they held him in awe. Not flinching, not caring for the wars that they waged. He sat as death stalked, and stared as plague raged. And as leaders lied, and as martyrs died, and as sons left forever, and as mothers cried, the people watched him and stopped to exult. The silent robot soon triggered a cult. Soon walls were rebuilt, and a throne was made, so the robot could see, his view not to fade, of the world that he guided. A notion absurd, considering the robot never uttered a word. His face was unchanging, his thoughts quite unclear. But the priests said just what the flock wanted to hear, and a gold crown they forged to sit on his head. By then it was moot if he was living or dead. Walls were erected and holy wars raged. The robot led all of it, silent as a sage. He just sat, for his followers knew just what to do. He sat and observed as his empire grew. Years passed, decades, centuries and more. The robot just sat at the center of the expanding lore. Armies were vanquished and cities were sacked, and acolytes died, and tenets were cracked, until one day there were none to remember this Khan. The temples were dust, the believers all gone. Not years, not centuries, but civilizations passed. Greater minds, greater countries, greater armies amassed. Greater wars were waged, greater death tolls surpassed, until finally peace fell, silence at last. And the robot, still silent, found himself in the dust, in a ditch off the road, unable to rust, where a little boy found him, drawn to the shine of glinting metal, a treasure so fine. Again they gathered, these people of time. They called him a relic and wiped off the grime. A robot, they called him, ancient, I'm sure. What do you do? They asked him, and asked him some more. Do you clean? Or construct? Or add zeros and ones? Do you sing? Do you dance? Were you built for fun? The little robot just sat. Not blinking, he stared. What's wrong with you? They asked. Have you not been repaired? They popped open his panel, and fingers fiddled round. Aha, they said, for a loose wire had been found. And he and even gave out a. Then something came over him, and slowly he stopped. A sadness, a shock, a memory no less. Not one, but all. Everything that had passed. Now robots can't cry. Never have, never will. Not this robot either, not really. But still, no human or beast could ever have cried like the sad little robot who sat there and tried.